Have you ever heard of a party where the food was unconventional? Ever wondered how to make such a great cake that you fart your face off? Alright, picture this like we're standing shoulder to shoulder at the counter, studio lights on, audience watching, and I'm talking you through this as casually as possible. First things first, before we even touch the stove, let's talk ingredients, because choux pastry is very honest baking. It only works if everything's measured and ready. For the pastry, you're looking at 125 millilitres of water, 60 grams of unsalted butter, just 5 grams of sugar for balance, and 2 grams of salt. Nothing fancy yet, but every one of these has a job. The water creates steam, the butter gives richness, and that tiny bit of sugar helps with colour. Now for the structure, flour and eggs. You'll need 75 grams of plain flour and then 2 to 3 medium eggs. I say 2 to 3 because choux pastry decides, not us. You're aiming for about 100 to 150 grams once the shells are gone. This is the part where I'd lean into the camera and say, don't feel intimidated. This dough tells you when it's happy. So we start cooking. Into the saucepan goes that water, butter, sugar and salt all together. You bring it to a full boil. No simmering, no halfway point. Once it's bubbling properly, you add all the flour at once and stir like you mean it. Within seconds, it turns from chaos into a smooth ball and pulls away from the sides. That moment right there, that's the magic starting. Then we keep the dough moving over the heat for another minute or two. This feels odd the first time, but you're drying it out slightly, and that's what lets the puffs actually puff in the oven instead of slumping. After that, slide it into a bowl and give it about 5 minutes. Not scrolling on your phone time, just enough time so the dough cools and doesn't cook the eggs. Now comes everyone's favourite panic moment, adding the eggs, 1 egg at a time, mixing well after each. At first it looks wrong, like it's splitting, but keep going. You're watching for the dough to turn smooth, shiny and pipeable. Lift the spoon and it should fall back in a thick, lazy ribbon. If it does that after 2 eggs, stop. That 3rd egg is optional, not mandatory. Once it's ready, you pipe little mounds onto a lined tray and straight into a 200-degree oven. And this is where discipline matters. Do not open the oven door early, no matter how curious you are. Those puffs need steam to inflate. After about 20 to 25 minutes, they should be golden, crisp and feel almost weightless. You let them cool completely before filling, because patience here pays off big time. And finally, the cream filling, which is refreshingly simple. You take 250 millilitres of whipping cream, add 30 grams of icing sugar and 5 millilitres of vanilla extract. Whip it to stiff peaks, then either slice the puffs or poke a hole underneath and pipe it in. At that point, you've gone from simple ingredients to a dessert that looks like it came from a pastry case. And that's the kind of transformation that always gets applause. Well, pull up a chair and let me spin you a yarn about a shindig hosted by a certain Ms. Belle Pum, where the menu was, let's just say, unique in every sense of the word. Imagine this, a grand castle, a hostess with a grudge and a guest list that included 96 unsuspecting souls and a horse named Magorse. The party started off with a bang. Literally, a bus pulled up and emptied its toilets into the cake mixture. Yes, you heard that right. The result? 10 people retching, 1 man gifting his wife with a mouthful of regurgitated cake, and a woman discovering a new, rather unsavoury nasal spray. But the fun didn't stop there. Oh no, far from it. A man, in a bout of explosive laughter, sprayed vomit all over freshly laundered clothes. Another woman, in a case of mistaken identity, used the vomit to paint her teapot. Alright, now we move on to the second recipe, and this is where things get festive, a little cheeky and very comforting. These are Christmas fart cookies, and yes, the name always gets a laugh, but just wait until you smell them baking. Before we even start mixing, let's talk ingredients like we're chatting it out on a morning show. So what goes into these cookies? You start with 115 grams of unsalted butter, softened, soft enough that your finger leaves an impression without sinking straight through. Add 100 grams of brown sugar for that deep caramel warmth, and then 85 grams of molasses or golden syrup. This is where the personality comes from. Molasses gives you that bold, old-fashioned gingerbread flavour, while golden syrup makes them a bit milder and sweeter. Next up is the binder. 1 medium egg. Just one. It pulls everything together without making the dough cakey. Then we shift gears into the dry ingredients, which honestly smell like Christmas the 2nd you open the jars. You'll need 260 grams of plain flour, 5 grams of baking soda for lift, 7 grams of ground ginger, and 5 grams of cinnamon. Already at this point, you can tell these cookies mean business. And then come the supporting characters, the spices that sneak up on you. You add 1 to 2 grams of ground cloves, depending on how bold you're feeling, and 2 grams of salt to keep the sweetness in check. If you want to go all in on holiday vibes, you can throw in about 1 gram of nutmeg, but that's optional. No rules here, just comfort. Now we actually start baking. Cream the butter and brown sugar together until it looks light and fluffy. This step traps air and keeps the cookies soft. Stir in the molasses and the egg, and suddenly everything turns glossy and gorgeous. In a separate bowl, whisk all those dry ingredients together so the spices are evenly distributed. Trust me, you don't want surprise clove in one bite. You bring the wet and dry together and mix just until you've got a soft, slightly sticky dough. At this point, it's technically ready, but chilling it for about 30 minutes makes life easier. It firms things up, deepens the flavour, and keeps the cookies from spreading too much in the oven. While it chills, the kitchen already smells like the holidays. Once you're ready to bake, roll the dough into balls, about 25 grams each. If you're feeling fancy, roll them in a little extra sugar for sparkle. Onto a tray they go and into a 175 degrees Celsius oven for 10 to 12 minutes. They should crack on top but stay soft in the middle. That's the sweet spot. Let them cool slightly before moving them because they set as they rest. And as for the name, well, ginger, molasses and cloves are classic warming spices, great for digestion and occasionally a little too effective. But honestly, once you taste these spicy, chewy, old-school Christmas cookies, you'll be laughing for all the right reasons. Now, you might be wondering, where was our hostess during all this? Ms. Belpum was busy in the kitchen cooking up a storm, and by storm, I mean a literal storm of bodily fluids. In a fit of rage against Horsmagorse, she let loose the pigs. The pigs, being pigs, did what they do best. They vomited into a pot, peed into glasses, and defecated onto plates. The result was a 3-course meal that would make even the strongest stomach turn. The guests, none the wiser, tucked in. Soup that was a little too chunky, drinks that were a bit too warm, and a chocolate pudding that was, well, not chocolate. The sounds that followed were a symphony of disgust, a cacophony of retching, gagging, and pleading for mercy. One guest, in an unfortunate turn of events, ended up vomiting into his own pants. Another, in a case of mistaken identity, used the vomit as face cream. A third, in a desperate bid to see clearly, used the vomit as eye drops and ended up blinding herself. Now, if all this sounds bizarre, wait till you hear about the man who had diarrhea into a woman's mouth. Yes, you heard that right. And she, in turn, vomited into his bum. This cycle of regurgitation and excretion continued for 20 long minutes until she, understandably, perished. And amidst all this chaos, Horsmagorse was having the time of his life, poking around and getting covered in cow pee. So the next time you receive an invitation to a party hosted by a certain Ms. Belpum, think twice before RSVPing, because you never know when you might be the unfortunate guest who vomits into his own pants, uses vomit as eye drops, or ends up in a cycle of regurgitation and excretion that ends in your untimely demise. At the party, a calamity occurred when she served 2 men vomit instead of stew from her cup. At that moment, the heavens above warned that the cup had devastating consequences and made people cry, wah, wah, ha, 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 hoo-poo, hoo-po. They both heaved out the window. However, to pepper so hot, it came out of both ends immediately. One man vomited into his wife's mouth. One girl vomited into her own vagina. One lady vomited into 3 girls' hair. One man had diarrhea into a woman's mouth, and she vomited up his bum. And this occurred repeatedly for 29 minutes until she died. A boy was so overwhelmed, he vomited into his mother's handbag. Then Horsmagorse ate a bit of explosive diarrhea powder and propelled himself to Beaumont Hospital with diarrhea. But Miss Belpum danced with glee as he cup had worked. Yes, her bog was the culprit. They sang blue and wee. Oh, you. Oh. Oh. Nuddles and Pole the male polar bear would like to sing a song. Fart it into the microphone as follows. Hoonk poo woo fart a tit tit. Used to dance in darkness, life was feeling heartless now. Setting fire to my own fart. Waka kaka kaka waka kaka fee you. Farty go but. At the end of the video, discuss more about Miss Belpum. At the end of the video, discuss Miss Belpum as she reported her for allowing 2 toddlers who accidentally had diarrhea into a coffee pot, thinking it was hot coffee, but it was actually acidic hot diarrhea. He tried to shout and scream at her when reporting her to the bobbing man. She slipped. Any hot drinks? 2. Horse Magorse saved over from the Stone Age. Yes, please, he replied. The fool drank the coffee. Diarrhea. He vomited so hard that you could hear the pit of his stomach retching. Making a squelch, swelch, swetching sound. At the party, a calamity occurred when she served 2 men vomit instead of stew from her cup. At that moment, the heavens above warned that the cup had devastating consequences and made people cry, wah, wah, ha, 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 hoo, poo, hoo, po. They both heaved out the window, however to pepper so hot it came out of both ends immediately. 1 man vomited into his wife's mouth. 1 girl vomited into her own vagina. 1 lady vomited into 3 girls' hair. 1 man had diarrhea into a woman's mouth and she vomited up his bum. And this occurred repeatedly for 29 minutes until she died. A boy was so overwhelmed he vomited into his mother's handbag. Then Horse Magorse ate a bit of explosive diarrhea powder and propelled himself to Beaumont Hospital with diarrhea. But Mrs. Belpum danced with glee as he cup had worked. Yes, her bog was the culprit. They sang Blaha and Wee. At the end of the video, bring us back to Miss Belpum in the library. She closed off the other floors and left all her friends and 96 other people, including Horse Magorse, no time to worry about him, with 600 gallons of water to drink each. But she forgot that the toilets on this particular floor were closed. The people needed to pee desperately and begged and pleaded with the door which was locked to each loo. Their tears could be heard from inside their bums. Then Miss Belpum decided to set them free into the vomit, smelling layers of the floors below. They all peed their pants and vomited so hard that they caused a flood down the stairs. 1 girl, though the vomit was face cream, so used vomit accidentally and smelled like pants. 1 girl has the vomit accidentally as eye drops, going blind forever. 1 man vomited. 1 man had diarrhea into a woman's mouth and she vomited into his bum. This repeatedly occurred for 20 minutes until she perished. Horse Magorse got covered in cow pee as a result of poking around Miss Belpum. Play particularly emphasis onto the lines. 1 lady vomited into her own vagina. 1 boy vomited up his penis, and she said a kakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakakak who and what was going to the Dublin Examining Board.